Let's get right into this. This is another installation of DIY recording for educators, and this episode is going to be all about certain do's and don'ts of trying to create course content, especially video course content for online courses. This could probably be applied to creating video content for the web in general, but these are specifically geared towards educators, and these are all kind of my take on a lot of things that I saw when I was working for the university creating MOOCs with faculty. Some of the things I saw that worked, some of the things I saw that didn't necessarily work. And these are just my opinion. You know, as always, there are a million different ways to do this kind of stuff. And you don't have to agree with me, but you know, this is kind of what advice I would give to any faculty who are looking to create course content or who have just started their journey on creating online courses, and especially MOOCs, where your lectures are primarily videos. Um, so the first thing I would actually recommend is, even though this video series is called DIY recording for educators, I do not actually recommend that you do it all yourself. Um, what I do recommend is that you enlist some kind of help. It doesn't have to be paid help, but you know, as in most things, it helps to get a second opinion about stuff. You know, if you're doing video for the first time, if you have a family member who's into video, or if you have some kind of resource at your university, maybe you have a video department, maybe you have students that are, creating videos who major in that kind of stuff, or if you know anybody that's created online courses before, definitely get a second opinion. As an educator, as faculty, as a teacher, as a professor, there are certain standards in video that you don't necessarily know, and you don't know what you don't know, as in anything. Um, and, even in your actual content, there are certain things that maybe you're not going to think about that someone who's watching your videos might notice right off the bat. So pretty much as early as you can, enlist some kind of, help with setting up your home studio, even if you're going for a budget home studio like this. I don't recommend that you take it all on yourself because it might become pretty overwhelming. There's a lot of work that goes into creating videos that even videos that are as simple as this. The nature, I may have said this before, but the nature of production, and especially of editing, is that you are making yourself invisible in certain ways, and you're making the process invisible. No one sees what goes into this kind of content, and if you've never done it before, it can become kind of overwhelming. All these little things that you don't necessarily think about. So for sure, enlist some kind of help, some kind of second pair of eyes. Not necessarily video, but for your content in general. If you have a graduate student, if you have a family member, maybe people who are going to be taking the course for the first time, they may see things that you don't. That's just the nature of how this works. So don't do it all yourself, get someone to help you. All right, next is, don't underestimate the time and effort it takes to produce videos. As I said before, the nature of production is to make itself invisible so that you never know what went into it. But a lot goes into it. Also, don't, in the same vein, don't expect that just because you've taught this course before in a lecture hall at a university, don't underestimate the time it's going to take to translate that to video. In a lot of cases, you may have to create whole new PowerPoints. You may have to restructure the order in which your course is taught. Video content is not the same as lecture content, and performing for a camera is not the same as performing to a lecture hall of students. So definitely do not underestimate the time that it's going to take to produce that content, video content or otherwise. Do leave room for unexpected delays and contingencies. There's a certain concept called the planning fallacy. And the planning fallacy basically says that, you are predisposed to be optimistic about your estimates of budget and your estimates of time when you're planning something in the early stages. So, this is just project management in general, not just related to video, not just related to online courses, but I'm sure you realize there's all kinds of things that can go wrong. Don't plan everything to go up against the wire, because something's going to happen. Either you're going to, something's going to come up in your personal life, or something's going to come up with your equipment that you have to fix, or, the like I said, the amount of time it takes to produce these videos is not trivial. So, as with everything, leave room for contingencies and pad your time when you're planning, especially your time, but also your budget. But, you know, pad all that stuff out and leave some extra buffer room in there, because you're probably going to need it no matter how good you are. Doesn't matter. You're going to need it. Don't do it for the money. This is a trap that I see faculty fall into who are creating online courses primarily for that extra source of cash. Um, University jobs don't always pay that well, especially if you're new faculty. I totally understand the need to diversify your offerings as an educator. But the thing about the online space is it's very fickle and very finicky. And you don't necessarily know that you have something unique to offer people online. If you do, that's great. Then you have a really, really good chance of having a lot of people take your course for, some kind of money. But don't assume that that's going to be the case, especially if you've never made an online course before and if you don't have an online presence already. The way to avoid falling into this trap is to remember why you're actually creating these courses and why it's important to you. And, besides the money, the people that I see succeed the most in creating online courses that are successful and doing well are people who do it because they feel like it's important to be able to disseminate their content to a wider audience. They feel it's important to break out of the traditional academic university model, and who believe in globalization, believe in communication, and really, really believe that what they're doing is for the benefit of students. If you're doing it only for the money, we talked about the time and the effort it takes to create these courses and these videos. If you're only doing it for the money, you may very quickly feel that you're doing a lot of work for not a lot of return. And especially in an online situation, I think there's a ratio that applies to all interactive online content, and especially, things like forums. But I heard somewhere that this also applies to online courses. The ratio is something like 90% of people that view your content are viewing it passively. They just sort of skim through it. They're not paying for it. They view the free stuff. Maybe they probably don't complete it. They're kind of just, ships in the night. The other 9%, or not the other 9%, but 9% of people are, I think, actively engaged, but not, they're doing your course for a grade and for completion, often paid, but they don't necessarily interact with you or interact on your message boards or, let you know that they exist. And then the final 1% are the people that are really actively engaged with the course, that post on the forums, that post on the message boards. I don't remember I could be wrong about those exact delineations about what each person's doing, but, for the most part, 90% are lurkers. 9% are, I think, more active lurkers and maybe sometimes interact, and 1% actually actively interact with your course. So, you may have a perception that you're not really talking to anybody. I don't know that I'm talking to anybody. I'm talking to you. I don't know how many people are actually watching this video, unless you comment, which most of you aren't going to do, which is fine. But don't overestimate the amount of people that are going to be actively engaged with your content, and therefore, don't overestimate the amount that you are going to make on these courses. Online spaces, like I said, are fickle, and a lot of people are just going to be happy to take what you give them for free, unless you have some sort of other, subscription model. Um, but like I said, the way to avoid falling into that trap is to, you know, have a reason why you're doing this that's not just for cash. And if you really, dig deep and if you're feeling that you're not getting the compensation that you expected, or that you feel that you're owed for this kind of work, because it is a lot of work, in a lot of cases, it's like having a whole other class that you have to prepare a syllabus for and that you have to interact with students with. Um, if you're feeling that way and you think really deep down and you decide that it's not that important to you, then, maybe it's just not for you. It's not for everybody. Don't force yourself into something you can't sustain. And this is specifically related to creating the videos, because they do take a long time, more than you expect. And because of that, if you go into a mode of production that you can't keep yourself doing consistently, you're going to fall off the wagon really fast. Other things are going to come into your life and they're going to interfere, and they're going to be more important than creating these online course videos. So if you lean instead into your strengths and habits, you would be much more likely to keep up with your mode of production. So, specifically this home studio setup, this is great for me because I'm working at home, all my equipment's here, I don't have another office. And it lets me, do this kind of production pretty much whenever I want. The downside to this kind of production is that no one's given me a deadline. No one's given me the topics. I don't have anyone putting that kind of pressure on me. So there's probably about a month between this video and the first video I did, and the reason is because I don't have to schedule studio time. I don't have to go into a space and let people know that I'm ready. None of that. I'm only accountable to myself. So if you aren't the kind of person who is able to take the initiative on your own and to complete this kind of stuff without some sort of hard deadline that someone else has to hold you accountable to, maybe this mode of production isn't for you. Maybe what you need is a studio that you have to schedule with other people. Maybe what you need is some kind of project manager that is able to create that schedule for you, is able to schedule that time for you. Having a studio deadline is really useful in terms of figuring out when exactly you need to have your content ready. Because if it's not ready by then people are on standby for you, and everything gets, pushed down the line, which happens sometimes, but if you pad your budget and your time, like we talked about before, it's not going to have as much of an impact on when you launch your course. But for some people, having to go into the studio and, take that much time out of their day, having to pay for the operators, that isn't necessarily for them because it takes a lot of time out of their normal work. So just, understanding yourself, understanding your own weaknesses, whether or not you have the ability to do this on your own, whether or not you need to rely on somebody else to push you. If you have a habit of already being in your office, maybe you might as well have a home office recording setup. Know yourself, know what your weaknesses are, know what your strengths are, and instead of trying to force yourself into a mode of production that you're just going to not want to do, find something that's going to work for you, find something that you're going to be consistent at, and that's going to really, really help you in terms of actually finishing a course and actually finishing content. And finally, don't expect immediate success. Especially in an online space, you may have to create 1, 2, 3 courses before people start to notice it and before it starts to get popular. It sort of depends what platform you're on, but the best way to have this kind of success in this space is to just be consistent and keep at it. Do anything you need to make sure you can get it done. Even if you think no one's listening, just do it anyway. You know, your course may not get picked up or become popular until, months down the road after you've launched it. And by then, maybe you don't know why you're still doing it. Having those important reasons to you why you're doing this in the first place is going to help with that. But for sure, the only way to do it is to do it. And that's all. Questions, comments, ideas, michelle.ambrose@gmail.com. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.